Hello, today we're talking with Oksana Vovchenko, the head of the discussion club named after Franklin. And we would like to discuss the national idea for Ukraine, right?
Yeah, right.
So what are your thoughts about it?
From the very beginning, I would like to emphasize that we are going to talk about nation, but not about ethnicity. These are two different things, and many people mix them. So, nation is not ethnicity. And the second point, I would like not to concentrate on the concept which Woodrow Wilson offered us last century, just for nation self-identification. I would like to rethink the national idea from the point of view as a mission. So what a nation can offer to others, like a mission of a company. If a company exists, it offers something valuable. So I would like to discuss national idea from this point of view, not just from criteria for self-identification, for separatism, not from criteria of state strategy or vision itself, just as a mission for others. For example, we are doing the best robots in the world, and this is what we can offer others. Or we do the best microchips in the world, or we offer the best financial services, and we offer the best financial framework in the world. So what a nation can offer others voluntarily, I mean that others must take that voluntarily, on demand, not compulsory, as I offer you democracy, either you want it or you not, or you don't. Or, for example, I offer you communism, either you want it or do not. Or I offer you Islamic revolution, even if you do not want it. So my idea is about something what is in demand and really valuable and give you appreciation and acknowledgement from others.
All right. So we have to admit that national idea, as any other idea, is just an idea. It gains reality only at the same degree as any other idea. And therefore, it's very important to state that the humanistic approach when the well-being of the person, the security, love, acceptance in the society, right and ability to knowledge, to freedom, is way more important than any other idea, because those factors we can see in our natural biological needs and rights. Therefore, we must admit that doesn't matter how brightly and attractively might one idea sound. First of all, it should not contradict, it should not damage and interfere with the basic human needs and rights. So I think it's a primary test whether the idea is contradicting this interfering, or not. If it doesn't pass this test, doesn't matter how bright it is, it should be abandoned. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I agree that you must contribute in well-being, and in this sense, in a well-being on a global scale, not just on well-being of your own state, but all the states on the earth. But how can we assess or evaluate if this idea for the sake of well-being or not?
Well, it's the easiest way to estimate the well-being on a global scale is to estimate the well-being of particular individuals, because it is built on this base. The same as in Soviet Union, we had very outstanding records of production of metal and other stuff, but it didn't indicate that people actually lived to the fullest of their lives and expectations. So we need to look at the individual. And at the same way, if we take any other idea, Islam or Christianity or communism, and we look at the person and we see that the freedom is in jeopardy, that the person is not receiving what his needs are, and he's limited because of this idea should be abandoned and abolished, because there is no idea that really worth to die for. Do you agree with that?
You see, I see a problem here. Just because all individuals are very different and there is the first level of contradiction, and at the same time, each individual is contradictory.
Yeah, and especially the ideas are very contradictory. Like when we watch the movies about ancient history or different other things, we can see how those ideas might be outdated, and something that seemed deemed to be very important back then, worth giving your life for, and suffering, and even suffering for generations, now looks ridiculous and not worth it. And we need to say that humans cannot create or support any universal idea that would be superior to their being, or and that way we might change the course of those atrocities that we usually associate almost with any idea, because it always starts with nice words, concepts that even probably close to poetry or something very elevated, and then it ends up with just again and again with killing, with dirty deeds, and it always ends with the same thing. Doesn't matter whether we start with Christianity and then we end up with the with Inquisition and schism in Russia between the old style Christians and new style Orthodox Christians. Like, doesn't matter what we start with, we always end up with the same, and the mechanism probably is working quite in the same way. So we put idea higher than any basic needs and any basic freedoms, And then we start serving this idea instead of serving people. So when the idea becomes more important than the human, his life, his well-being, his happiness, mundane happiness, then this idea goes bad. And we can divert such idea, doesn't matter whether it's the brightest and the best idea ever, or the darkest idea, they all end up in the same direction. And coming back to the nationalism and national ideas, it seems to be that they were around forever, but historians say that it's not the truth. Nationalism was on the rise just last 300 years, 400 years mostly. And in the modern world, it's very outdated concept. We have such a mixture of different ideas, collaborations. So the national idea is coming down to a nice, not killing anybody, traditionalism, which defines us throughout our life as Ukrainians, Russians, Israelites, or belonging to any other ideal environments like Orthodox Christians or gay community or whatever it is. And at that stage, it's nice, and it's working as a xenophilic. When you are inviting others, you see their diversity, you appreciate their diversity, and you are ready to demonstrate friendly your diversity, it's xenophilic, not xenophobic, but xenophilic. When you love different, when you love somebody who is different from you, and you embrace their culture, the same way how we like different cuisines, like from Caucasus, Georgian cuisine, or Chinese cuisine, or German sausages, or a lot of things that we connect, and we appreciate those things, and they're nice. And not just the food, it can be the poetry, the language, the diversity. For example, I would like to tell how I, as a writer, feel about Ukrainian language. I think it's so enriching the Russian language. It shows such interesting perspectives of the meaning of the roots of the words, where the evolution of the languages were different. And in Ukrainian language, the meanings have evolved in one way, and in Russian, they evolved in another way. And the use of different roots have enriched the Slavic, pan-Slavic linguistic environment. And when I asked to translate one of my books, I was enjoying tremendously this translation. And I had to learn Church Slavonic because I used to be a priest. And after that, the understanding of most of the Slavic languages were not a problem as it used to be. I have a difficulty to speak again because it's not that easy. The phonetics of Ukrainian language is quite difficult, and especially for those who already used to pronounce certain words and certain sounds in a certain way. And I find that the closed languages are more difficult to learn. The same situation was with Norwegian and German. I lived in Norway, and I learned a little bit Norwegian, but after I learned some German completely pushed away Norwegian. So about national ideas, they tend to be a little bit aggressive when the national idea is young. I had witnessed it in Israel, for example. It's a young nation. Yes, they used as a basis for this nation the ancient language, but it was almost artificially restored, very accurately based on the ancient roots of the words from Torah and other Hebrew books, but it is artificially restored. And as usually, we can witness that they were trying to push this language because Jewish people used to speak Yiddish and other hybrid languages from their diasporas, from Spain, from Northern Africa. And they pushed everybody to speak Hebrew at first generations. But now look at them. It's a well-developed, very nice, very well-spoken language. And I could witness it because I was there starting 90s. And now it's already 30 years of my exposure to Hebrew language. And I can witness the evolution of the language, how it hardens, how it becomes even more flexible and beautiful. The same with the German language. German is a relatively young nation too. They have collected their lands in the end of 19th century. And we can witness the same push of nationalism and linguistic, I would say, xenophobia, when every single word has to be German. Like in hundreds of languages, the word fact would be sounding like fact. And in German, it would be Tatsache. And in Hebrew, it will be uvda. Again, like the international words would be used. Why it happens? Because the language tries to survive. The nation is new, and it fears to fail, and that's why it tries to be a little bit more pushy and aggressive. Otherwise, it might be extinguished and not to prevail. But again, if we allow those ideas to affect the freedoms of people, the freedom to speak any language they want, to do whatever they want, if it doesn't interfere with with abilities to do things by others, then those ideas become toxic. And that's where we find those nationalistic, toxic movements. They are not about showing off your special place, not making the case of a new, unique, beautiful culture. They're about pushing away all other cultures and being aggressive towards others. And that's where probably is the border between the positive side of the national idea and a very toxic and very dangerous side. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I started from this point that it should not be compulsory. you should take this idea absolutely voluntarily.
We also
While
need
you
to
while you speak, I
remember,
think that idea must be inspiring.
absolutely, we must remember always that it's a kind of game. We can create, you and me, a new culture. Just sit and create a new language, completely new language. We can create the new alphabet, even the new principle, how to speak. We can create huge, interesting, unbelievable tradition to give this name to our non-existent nationality or culture. And we can start recruiting others to support it. There were attempts like that, like Esperanto, for example, the artificial language that was invented to become an international language. And actually, surprisingly, until now, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of people that actually speak in this language and supporting this idea still. So the national idea usually is artificial and modern and specific to people that support it. It might not have real connection to what this nation used to be. It's everyone who has supported their national idea, they will attack me saying, no, that's wrong, we are blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, every time a person follows some idea, this idea is crafted specifically for his needs, his beliefs. And if we look back into the history, we'll find a lot of things that will not be acceptable by our modern perception. And we will not support those things like terrible atrocities or wars or other things that were quite acceptable back then, and they were based on certain national ideas. And we can witness how the national idea in the hands of an idiot can become again, I mean Putin. It can become again a quasi idea that doesn't really have real roots. It's intentionally trying to tie up things with other things and manipulate people and submerge half of the continent into the war, the real, ugly war. So it doesn't mean that we need to again and again say that no national ideas. No, they will survive, they will thrive. But nobody who is a reasonable person in Ukraine doesn't want it to be nationally aggressive and repulsing everybody else. When we look at Ukraine and think of its future, we want to see the civilized, nice, smart, developed country, something like Sweden, all right, which is embracing others, which is leader of the humanist ideas, which is not the corrupted and greedy society where everyone is trying to survive. And that's what it was before the war. I'm sorry, but it was. I helped some people in Ukraine. There was no much help from the government institutions and a lot of problems. And those problems are mostly in the heads of people. Because when you tell our local people in Canada, for example, someone is in need of food, they say, oh, that's great, we'll give some food and money and blah, blah, blah. What happened in Ukraine, they would say, it's their fault. You know what I mean? So when we say that, like I was trying to make the same system as food banks, for example, at least we have solved the problem. For example, in Canada, there's no problem of hunger because with almost no questions asked, anyone can go to certain places which are called food banks and take food. And not just soup, but a lot of different kinds of food, canned food, fresh food. And all those foods are donated by other people. They are non-governmental. It's not the government that does it. It's just the people organize that. And living here for so long and facing people that in the same need, for example, in Russia or in Ukraine, I found the difficulty to organize those things and the difficulty to find those things organized. And it's mostly because of the mentality of the people themselves. So the first reaction of the people that used to live in the society, which is supportive and very human oriented, is to help and to enjoy that there are ways that nobody would go hungry. And in other societies, it is negativity, saying, oh, if he can't get food, it's his fault. Or he's poor because he's lazy, or whatever it is. And this is the major change that has to happen in order to turn Ukraine into a civilized society. The change inside of the people's mentality. And I believe that this shock that Ukraine is going through right now might change the way how people feel about each other and able to help each other. Of course, it would be better that it would never happen, but usually such things, they make people closer. Why I'm saying that? During the Gulf War, I was in Israel, and we were the target for the attacks from Saddam Hussein missiles. And those days when there were these alarms, until now I remember those alarms, like, ooh, like you have those alarms now sometimes. And it made people close to each other. The relationship that we had, I used to work in the hospital, actually improved, and everybody felt like a family. And this closeness wasn't that much as it used to be in those days, weeks, and months that we faced the same danger. And we were all together in this and doing something, trying to survive and to help others to survive. So in terms of national ideas, absolutely this event that is going on now, the war, has influenced everybody who lives in Ukraine. And I believe that it will fortify the country and the nation in a positive way. The feeling of identity, the feeling of belonging, and the hopes for the better future are actually quite possible. Don't you think?
Yes, perhaps so. But actually, donation and volunteering are very developed here in Ukraine. Ukrainians are very supportive people to each other. That's strange for me to hear that from you. Have you had a negative experience here in Ukraine?
Ukrainians are supportive to each other. Yeah, especially now, yes. I mean the institutions. I mean the corruption. I mean the the inability to help those that are not able to provide to themselves. The problem is we're a little bit under this idea of here we go. The war came, and what those that did corruption, they just disappeared. You know, what those that were damaging the country and doing bad things, did they disappear? No, we just don't hear about them because it's not important now. But it didn't change. There were a lot of problems before the war. A lot of problems before the war. I know that you don't like being criticized, but nobody likes being criticized. But that's the truth. And if we're not looking at this truth, we will fall into the same problems right away. Right away, we will fall into the same problems. We don't want Ukraine to be a quasi country where everyone who has the power is trying to steal as much as they can and hide it overseas. We don't want this. Nobody wants this, right? But if we
Yes,
do not
exactly.
admit that it exists and it's accepted and it was accepted, and if we don't, then they will just hide themselves under disguise of this victory and changes, and will do their black things behind those curtains while everybody will be just celebrating the yeah, that's the problem. Like we say, okay, the whole world will help Ukraine to rebuild, and how much money these people will steal from this rebuilding. That's tremendous. And why they steal it? Why they steal it? And would we steal if we would be at the same position? That's very basic questions. Why it happens? Why the mentality, certain mentality of the people is built in a way that it's stupid to spend money for something that they have been given for, and we need to find a scam how we can take this money away and build ourselves something nice overseas. And that's the same problem like with Russia or any other corrupt regimes. And it's still there. Nobody extinguished them. Okay, and that would be the problem of national idea, because if you want to be proud of the country you live, of course you get a lot of credit for the whole world is absolutely surprised with the courage and of Ukrainian people now, how they can stand against grim and brutal army for half a year. It will be in history like the Finnish war in Finland, when the small Finnish army didn't let Stalin's army to take over Finland. Of course, it's a huge surprise for everybody, and very glad that this can happen, that actually the only power which is trying to stop this absolute madness. But still, the society is sick, and it was sick before the war, and it will be sick after the war. And one of the reasons the war happened, because the society was sick. And it's not fault of anybody who lives now. It inherited tens of years of Soviet idiocracy and before, and all the historical facts. And that's the question, why the person that lives in Ukraine behaves one way, and then they immigrate and they behave another way. Why in Ukraine they don't pay the taxes, and they come to United States and they pay the taxes? Just an example. And the taxes is the blood of the society, right? Or like this sickness within the society is the major problem. It doesn't matter which language you use when you run the country. The problem is if the country is run in a certain way, it will decline. It will decline, and it will not be able to be a successful society. And we need to make sure that the national ideas will not cover those things that destroy the same nation they want to protect and thrive. Do you agree?
Yes, of course. And what is important for us now that so many people have left Ukraine. So what the country is going to offer them to get them back? Now many people select different countries, mostly by national idea, I would say, not because of material benefits, actually. Because almost all European countries offer the same material basis. So people select a place where to move, just learning the country, the culture, the social basement, I would say national ideas. So to have them back, we must offer something very, very, very attractive, very competitive. After they have such a wonderful experience somewhere else, would they return?
That's another problem, that a lot of people immigrated, especially women, because they don't let men out. But what will happen probably, that after the war, the men will follow their close ones, and Ukraine will lose probably millions of people, 1, 2, 3 million people.
I
Most
think
active.
far more.
Even more.
More.
And those are
From
the
5
active
up to
ones.
10 million people. Ukraine may lose from 5 up to 10 million people.
Yes, and the countries, for example, Canada, it's trying to benefit on these people and not let them back, because they will let them to get the status and so on and so on. And on one hand, it sounds great. Once in a while, once in the blue moon, they decided to help those that really need help. But I always thought of immigration as damage to those countries that get drained of the most ambitious, the most educated, and most capable people. They are losing these people, and quite simply, those countries, they it's a serious loss. It's like bleeding. Scientists, businessmen, and everybody else. Those people could have tremendously contribute to the development of their own countries. And here they cannot do 100% whatever they're capable of because their starting point is very low. And it's like using the microscope as a hammer, right? And that's what usually happens. We don't need here so many scientists or other specialists, and they have to do the basic jobs and or not to use their capabilities to do things, right? So it's
Right.
another thing is that a lot of people will come from war very damaged and used to kill. And on the, on the biological reflexes level, when you live month by month where you need to survive, and the conflict resolution is to kill the enemy, it's very difficult to adjust to the peaceful society where it's not an option to kill your adversary, right? It's another problem
Even
that,
if you do not kill, just the risk perception is very different. So now when we risk every day, because every day there are missile attacks, so we take risks very differently, and we bring this with us to other countries. We will drive in a different way. We will take monetary good food, for example, or even coronavirus. We do not pay attention to it at all now because it's not the most dangerous thing for us.
yeah, well, you didn't choose to be in this situation, but we need to be prepared. And also what I think is quite important, less look back to history. There was nothing really good in history for any country. We can find so many bad things that have been done and happened. For example, your enemy is justifying their aggression by calling you Nazis and so on and so on. And if we look at the at some elements that were in the society, it was quite unnecessary to bring up those dead people like Bandera or events that happened during the Second World War. They have nothing to do with modern reality. You can use new symbols, new meanings. Why to bring these dead ghosts that take with them so much of disputed and bloody things? And I think that in new Ukraine of the future, there should not be place for those things, because they didn't give anything good about it, creating this controversial things. Don't you think so?
I don't know. No, I'm not sure actually, because they were contradictory from the very beginning, as any Soviet heritage actually. The same thing happens in Latvia, for example, or Lithuania, Estonia, Baltic states, I mean, they now take off the monuments, Soviet time monuments, even monuments for Soviet soldiers, actually.
That's their right. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about
So why we, yes, we are searching for our roots. This is why we take, as you say, Gold Coast here, because we just want to have our roots for our independence.
yes, but the problem is that it's easily manipulative.
Yes, of course, as any history. As
As
any
any
history.
history, and that's why we shouldn't base our modern
Yes, I
aims.
agree. It's better to create new history, to refresh it a little bit.
Exactly, because we already see how costly it is when the person tries to live in the previous century and forces everybody else into the previous century, and he actually creates the previous century kind of war. And
Actually, this is how we oppose ourselves to Russia's when we say that Russia's tried to save all the Soviet Union heritage while we are striving for the future.
it's all absolutely, it's all very deadly illusion. Soviet Union was a very bad place to live, and we witnessed it, and the fact that we used to be young back then, and probably that's why we might remember those things as more positive rather than negative. But the truth is, there was no freedom. People had to be forced to get basic things, and there was a deficit of everything everywhere. And the country was the same kind of country Putin is trying to build, that threatening everybody with nuclear weapon and not valuing anybody's lives in their society. So it's again, I don't understand why there is a need for national idea to look back and even not finding anything good in these back things, just to force these things that you still have in history, to force them to serve your national idea principles. It's the same as if Norwegians would take their Viking past and try to base their new society on their Viking principles. And Vikings, they were just robbers that were coming all around Europe, killing everybody and taking their stuff. Really. And the same thing with the past that we had. We don't have to invent or find those myths to base them as a basis of the national idea. National idea can exist because of the beauty of the idea of the diversity, of openness and desire to embrace.
We mentioned already several criteria for an idea. So it must be inspiring, for well-being, do not hurt liberties, bring you to the future, and do not like to look into the past.
Exactly. looking into the past will bring us to the past. And it's ugly. We see how ugly it is. It is ugly. We don't want this past. And I suggest the first rule that always treat any idea as a virtual thing, which cannot be higher than human life and human well-being. Yes, it doesn't sound very idealistic and nice, but it is. We don't have any other factor that we can use as a base to decide where to go and where not to go. And I suggest to use this as a base. If people don't get killed, if people are not hated, if people are fed well, if they have freedoms, then this national idea is good. But if it's an opposite, then it is not good. Like the primary thing, I'm not saying that it's perfect, but at least it can protect us to do the bigger wrong, which we always do when we entertain any idea to its extreme. Right?
Yes, right. And what I also think about that, it must be clear, this idea. For example, what Russia's export, something what they call Russia's world. What it is it? Nobody knows.
I know what it means.
Even they, by themselves, cannot describe what Russian world is.
I can tell you what it is.
We can just observe what they has brought us.
It's
and what
all
they have
based,
brought look ugly.
It's all based on religious fanatism, based on the idea that Russia is the third Rome, that the true Church of Christ has been given first to Rome, then to Byzantium, and now to
not so
Russia.
fast to become the third
No. I'm just trying to explain. You know, this daughter of philosopher Dugin was killed. I'm just explaining what their ideas are. Their ideas are based on if they have the true religion, so everybody else is just Satan. And they are fighting on the good side with Satan. Exactly like Islam in its extreme form, which they believe they on the side of God and they fight with everybody else who are not fidels. And so the idea of Russian world is based on this religious and philosophical approaches. And when you get into this, since I was a Orthodox priest, and I'm very familiar with these ideas. And when you get there, it's very hard to get out, because the logic, the way how it is built, it takes you inside and doesn't let you out. You might say, okay, Ukraine is Orthodox Christian country. They would say, oh, you are schismatics, Latin heresy, your church is schismatic, and so on and so on. So again, they will go to heaven and everybody else will just die. So Putin actually, in this phrase, he has shown that the basis to his idea of so-called Russian world is religious idea. It's not new at all. And the main idea, we are right, you are wrong. We're with God, you're against God. And our God is giving us the power and the reason to, to either kill you or to convert you to the right way. That's the essence of it. And that's why it's so dangerous and so toxic. Okay?
Yes, and actually, as for me, there is no idea at all, because just to say we are right and you are wrong, it's not enough. Just describe the world which you built. They do not imagine this world by themselves. They have no picture of this world. What does it look like? Is that a happy world? Are
No, it
people are
doesn't
rich
have to be
there or
happy. No,
happy, or how people live there?
Christianity,
How they
Christianity is
what?
not building a
Just to
happy world.
destroy everything you see, and that's all?
No, Christianity is teaching you to sacrifice your life on earth to better life in heaven. And that's the truth. And if we
So
have
they propose us a world of destruction with bad roads, with poor people, with little food.
yeah,
What?
like he said, he doesn't want the world without Russia. Like if you listen to your enemy, you can hear where it comes from. It's all religious fanatism, very toxic. And if you don't understand the basics, you don't understand whom you are fighting with. The problem is that if you actually take to extreme the Orthodox ideas and Christianity, take it to extreme, you'll end up with whatever they end up with. Like Catholics ended up with their Inquisition, and these guys are ending up with their Russian wall. You see?
Yeah.
And not many people are talking that the basis for this is a religious basis, philosophical based on religion. And I know that because I used to be an Orthodox priest, even though I belong to Bulgarian church, but I've learned all this stuff. And I'm telling you, if you follow through some of the basics of Orthodox Christianity, you can fall into this delusion very easily, very easily.
Yes, probably because of that, Russian people look very much like sectants for me.
Sect, yeah, it's like a sect, yeah.
How to say in English? Sectants. The members of the sect.
Sect, yes. Yep.
It's even hard to talk to them because they are absolutely blind, I would say, or they are not capable to understand some other picture of the world. They even cannot imagine that some other people may have other picture of the world.
Because they are with Satan.
Because what?
With Satan. With devil.
Okay.
The only one, the right thing is whatever they believe in. And like I say, deeper you go, more evidence you get. Like I can easily argue on their side, and it will be quite difficult to have an argument with me. I will be bringing you the reasons why that's the thing. And also the Christianity is waiting for the end of the world. That's the way this religion is built. So there is nothing wrong to experience the end of the world and the judgment and go into heaven and go into hell. It's all according to the same religion, right? And it's a close relative to Islam. and Judaism. It's all three Abrahamic religions. And especially with the Christianity, the idea of well-being is not accepted. The idea is above any well-being, above human life. Christ have said, who tried to save their life lost it, and who lost their life got the eternal life. And a lot of other things that can be interpreted in this way, and was interpreted for thousands of years to prove the religion war. And by the way, one of the bases of this war is religion as well. Remember how it all started? What Poroshenko did the last thing before he left? He got the Thomas, the independence of the Ukrainian church from Constantinople. And this made actually the situation that has been predicted, that there is no true church on earth, because you can prove that Moscow Patriarchate is not right anymore, because it's in odds with the Constantinople, and the same seminar student can prove you that the Constantinople is not right. So there's no true church on earth anymore. All right. And it's one of the predictions before the end of the world that there will not be true church on earth, and it will be very hard to find the true church. And we are witnessing this. So it's because the religion is not very popular anymore, so they're trying to hide. But obviously, the basic, this hardly found idea that they were looking for, it's just the old idea of the supremacy of those who have gotten the inheritance of Jesus Christ through his apostles as a third Rome, and the prediction that there will be, Russia will be the third Rome and there won't be another one. And all those predictions about Russia as the savior of the world and righteous and blah, 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 blah. And self-sacrifice that they are trying to promote now, it's also coming from this same thing.
What's interesting about Russian accusing us Ukrainians to be Nazis, actually radical nationalists never got power in our parliament. Never.
I know
Even
that.
now they do not have. Ukrainians are not radical national. And actually, Russia national idea is far more radical.
Look, I know that you didn't, but those radicalists that you used to have, they don't have to have power in the parliament. It's enough that they're ready to kill anyone whom they don't like. The same with the president. If he would be too far away from whatever they support, look, we all remember this televised talk that Zelensky is coming to the trenches, and one of those from the nationalist battalions is not respecting him, talking to him like he's nobody. It's in the beginning of the when he was just elected. The problem with the radicals, they don't have to have the majority. They are pressing with the force and making sure that no steps can be taken to any direction that actually can smoothen the rough edges, right? And it's not to the benefit of the country, of course.
Right,
but
but actually there are never too much radicals in Ukraine. Actually, I have never met living here. And I
well,
never met that people very much support someone radical, very radical opinion. So that's a myth, actually a myth created.
it doesn't matter whether they are or not. The impression has been created. Okay, the impression has been created, and this is bad impression. Of course, after this aggression and after heroic acts of those battalions that didn't want to leave Mariupol and stayed there until the end, and it's some serious stuff to explain, right? Where they get their energy from, right? And how seriously they believed in whatever they fight it for. But still, it doesn't make it any less worrisome, because we all have this other pole of the nationalism that we don't want to go, which is not Nazism, no? And with all our capabilities, we try to stay away from it, not allow the national idea to tell we are special and all the rest are inferior to it. And that's how easily we slip into these beliefs. But the religious basics of the ideology in Russia is very well visible if you are familiar with Christianity, Orthodox Christianity. And I can understand why this philosopher, who some call fascist philosopher, Dugin, was targeted. Because yes, he's one of the most prominent ideologists that actually explain this connection of the mystical and historical mission that Russia is supposed to carry on. So, and that's the problem too. So I suggest to keep, when I'm asked with all those examples from the Bible, I cite this place where Jesus said, I was hungry and you fed me. I was homeless and you let me in. I was sick and you attended me. And those things are repeated 4 times. And that's the way how you get to heaven. That's the way how you follow Christ. Not by saying that everybody is with Satan and I am going to kill you, but by feeding the hungry, attending to the sick. And that's what we need to entertain, and not the other things that we wrongly apply to our lives, and then we end up with what we end up with. I am very grateful that you came up with this idea of discussion of the national idea. And I do believe that we have succeeded to talk about this in the most balanced way, not hurting anyone. And we looked quite deep into the contradictions that are created when the ancient ideas, religious ideas, or just historical facts are brought up to our modern reality, and how ugly it can turn. And we came up with some recommendations not to do those things, and always measure any idea towards the well-being of the person, even though it's not perfect, but at least we will have everybody fed, everybody healthy, and nobody killed, at least.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.